Well, Dzhokhar Tsarnaev has been portrayed as a nice guy, somebody who would never hurt a fly, even a follower of his demanding older brother. So is he being portrayed as a victim before he even gets to trial? We're back with Fox News senior judicial analyst Judge Andrew Napolitano. Judge, do you expect that the defense is going to try to say, really wasn't his fault? He was just a kid, his brother duped him into it. And is that going to be effective given the heinous nature of the crime?
Well, I do expect the defense would say it, Mike. It's actually called a defense of diminished capacity, a fancy phrase meaning, yeah, he did this stuff, but he wasn't of a clear mind when he did it. He was led along by somebody else. Somebody else was actually controlling his will, not in a zombie-like way, but just because of his relationship to his brother. Will it work? You know, it's going to depend on the jury. If it does work, Governor, it would save him from execution. He still could be convicted of some lesser offense than use of a weapon of mass destruction to kill people, but he'd go to jail for the rest of his life rather than be executed.
I can only imagine the outrage in this country if this guy were to get anything less than a death sentence for what he did. And does it matter that in the hours following this vicious attack, he went to work out at the fitness center, he slept in his dorm, he tweeted and connected with social media? Does that not kind of indicate this guy's really just cold-blooded?
You know, it actually cuts both ways, Governor. Sometimes the absence of remorse shows that you really didn't think you did anything wrong. Other times, the absence of remorse shows that you're just a cold-blooded killer who has no feeling whatsoever for the horrific crime just committed. It's going to depend upon how that absence of remorse is portrayed by his defense lawyers and then resisted by the government's lawyers. Here's an interesting law for you. He does not have to prove diminished capacity. The government has to prove that he had full capacity, that he was not diminished. The burden is always on the government in this type of case.
Do you think this trial will be one that we'll see televised when it ever comes about?
No. In fact, we know it won't be televised because it'll be in a federal court, as I said earlier, probably not in Boston. And federal courts are not, and cameras, even still cameras, much less television cameras, are not permitted in federal courts. We'll have a good idea of what's happening, but we're not going to be able to watch it in real time.
If you were sitting on the bench in this case were before you, what would be the concerns that you would have to make sure that the trial was fair and yet at the same time that it didn't turn into a sideshow and a circus of ranting and raving some terrorist nonsense?
Well, the judge's job is the gatekeeper, so the judge doesn't decide what the evidence is, doesn't decide what the evidence means, but he decides what evidence, or she decides what evidence the jury will hear. I'd have a couple of concerns. Did the government follow proper procedures? Did the FBI follow the Constitution and federal law in the manner in which it gathered evidence against him? My other concern would be, this is just going to be a trial on whether or not he did these acts and intended to do them and intended fully and knowingly to do them. This is not going to be a trial on American foreign policy or on religion or on Muslim versus Judeo-Christian, because that's not a defense, and therefore there's no place for that in the courtroom.
Judge, you've just given us some of the reasons that we're so very glad that we asked you to be here tonight. Thank you for joining us on this special live broadcast. Great to talk with you always.
Pleasure, Governor. Thanks.
Judge Andrew Napolitano, senior judicial analyst for Fox News.